Mujica's complete UN speech, September 24, 2013.
Sí, es posible un mundo con una humanidad mejor.
Dear friends, I am from the South. I come from the South. Corner of the Atlantic and the Plata. My country is a gentle, temperate, pastoral peneplain. Its history of ports, hides, jerky, wool and meat had purpled decades of spears and horses until finally, at the dawn of the 20th century, it became a vanguard in social matters, in the state and education. I would say, social democracy was invented in Uruguay. For almost 50 years the world saw us as a kind of Switzerland. In reality, economically we were bastard children of the British Empire. And when it succumbed we lived the bitter honey of dire terms of trade, and remained stagnant longing for the past, almost 50 years remembering Maracana, our sporting feat. Today we have resurged in this globalized world, perhaps learning from our pain. My personal history, that of a young man because I was once young, who like others wanted to change his time and his world following a dream of a libertarian and classless society. My mistakes. In part they are children of my time. Obviously I assume them, but sometimes I shout to myself with nostalgia. Who could have the strength of when we were capable of drinking so much utopia? However, I don't look back because today's reality was born from yesterday's fertile ashes. On the contrary, I don't live to settle scores or reverberate memories. It anguishes me, and in what way, the future I will not see and for which I commit myself. Yes, a world with a better humanity is possible, but perhaps today the first task is to save life. But I am from the South, and I come from the South to this assembly. I unequivocally carry with me the millions of poor compatriots in the cities, in the wastelands, in the jungles, in the pampas and in the mineshafts of Latin America, common homeland that is being made. I carry the crushed original cultures, the remains of colonialism in the Malvinas, the useless blockades of that Cayman under the Caribbean sun called Cuba. I carry the consequences of electronic surveillance that does nothing but sow distrust that poisons us uselessly. I carry a gigantic social debt, and the need to defend the Amazon. The seas are great rivers of America. I carry the duty to fight for homeland for all, and for Colombia to find the path to peace. And I carry the duty to fight for tolerance. Tolerance is needed for those who are different, and with whom we have differences and disagree. Tolerance is not needed for those with whom we agree. Tolerance is the foundation of being able to coexist in peace and understanding that in the world we are different. The combat against the dirty economy, drug trafficking, scam and fraud, corruption, contemporary plagues fostered by anti-value, that which maintains that we are happier if we enrich ourselves however we can. We have sacrificed the old immaterial gods, and we occupy the temple with the market god. He organizes our economy, politics, habits, life and even finances us in installments and cards the appearance of happiness. It would seem that we were born only to consume and consume, and when we cannot we bear frustration, poverty and even self-exclusion. The truth today is that to spend and bury the detritus, in what science calls the carbon footprint. If we aspired in this humanity to consume like an average American, 3 planets are essential to be able to live. That is to say, our civilization mounted a lying challenge, and as we are going, it is not possible for everyone to fulfill that sense of waste that has been given to life which, in fact, is massifying as culture our epoch always directed by accumulation and the market. We promise a life of waste and squandering. Deep down it constitutes a countdown against nature and against humanity as a future. Civilization against simplicity, against sobriety, against all natural cycles, but worse. Civilization against freedom that supposes having time to live human relationships, the only transcendent thing, love, friendship, adventure, solidarity, family. Civilization against free time that doesn't pay, that can't be bought, and that allows us to contemplate and scrutinize the scenario of nature. We devastate the true forests and implant anonymous concrete jungles. We confront sedentarism with treadmills, insomnia with pills, loneliness with electronics. Are we happy away from the eternal human? This question should be asked. Stunned, we flee from our biology that defends life for life itself as a superior cause, and we replace it with consumerism functional to accumulation. Politics, the eternal mother of human events, was shackled to economics and the market. From leap to leap, politics can only perpetuate itself, and as such delegated power, and entertains itself stunned fighting for government. Unbridled marches the human story buying and selling everything, and innovating to be able to negotiate somehow what is non-negotiable. There is marketing for everything. For cemeteries, funeral services, maternity wards, marketing for fathers, for mothers, for grandparents and uncles, passing through secretaries, cars and vacations. Everything is business. Still, marketing campaigns deliberately fall on children and their psychology to influence adults, and have an assured territory toward the future. There is plenty of evidence of these quite abominable technologies that sometimes lead to frustrations and more. The average little man of our great cities wanders between financial institutions, and the routine tedium of offices sometimes tempered with air conditioning. He always dreams of vacations and freedom. He always dreams of finishing the accounts, until one day, the heart stops and goodbye. There will be another soldier covering the jaws of the market, ensuring accumulation. It is that the crisis is the impotence of politics incapable of understanding that humanity does not escape nor will escape from the feeling of nation. Feeling that is almost embedded in our genetic code. We are from somewhere. But today is the time to battle to prepare a world without borders. The globalized economy has no other conduct than the private interest of very few, and each national state looks at its continuous stability. And today, the great task for our peoples, in our humble way of seeing, is the whole. As if this were not enough, productive capitalism, frankly productive, is half imprisoned in the box of the great banks that deep down are the summit of world power. More clearly, we believe that the world cries out for global rules that respect the achievements of science that abounds, but it is not science that governs the world. It is necessary, for example, a long agenda of definitions. How many hours of work throughout the earth? How do currencies converge? How is the global fight for water financed? And against deserts, how is it recycled and pressure applied against global warming? What are the limits of each great human endeavor? It would be imperative to achieve planetary consensus to unleash solidarity toward the most oppressed, to punish waste and speculation with taxes, to mobilize the great economies not to create disposables with calculated obsolescence, but useful goods without frivolities to help lift the poorest in the world. Useful goods against world poverty. 1,000 times more profitable than making wars is to pour a useful neo-Keynesianism of planetary scale, to abolish the most flagrant shames that this world has. Perhaps our world needs fewer world organisms of those that organize forums and conferences that serve the hotel chains and airline companies a lot, and that, at best, nobody collects and transforms into decisions. We need, yes, to chew a lot on the old and eternal of human life, together with science, that science that strives for humanity not to get rich. With them, with the men of science hand in hand, first counselors of humanity, establish agreements for the entire world. Neither large national states, nor transnationals, and much less the financial system, should govern the human world. Yes, high politics intertwined with scientific wisdom. There is the source, that science that does not desire profit, but that looks to the future and that tells us things we don't heed. How many years ago did they tell us certain things in Kyoto that we didn't pay attention to? I think we must summon intelligence, the command of the ship above the earth. Things of this style and others that I cannot develop seem indispensable to us, but would require that the determining factor be life, not accumulation. Obviously, we are not so naive. These things will not happen, nor similar ones. We have many useless sacrifices ahead, much patching of consequences and not facing the causes. Today the world is incapable of creating planetary regulation to globalization, and this is due to the weakening of high politics, that which deals with everything. For a time we are going to witness the refuge of more or less regional agreements that are going to pose an internal lying free trade internal, but that deep down are going to end up building supranational protectionist parapets in some regions of the planet. In turn, important industrial branches and services all dedicated to saving and improving the environment are going to grow. Thus, we are going to console ourselves for a time. We are going to be entertained. And naturally accumulation is going to continue imperturbable for the delight of the financial system. Wars will continue and therefore fanaticisms, until perhaps nature calls us to order and makes our civilization unviable. Perhaps, gentlemen, our vision is too crude, without mercy, and we see man as a unique creature. The only one there is above the earth capable of going against his own species. I repeat again, what some call the ecological crisis of the planet is a consequence of the overwhelming triumph of human ambition. That is our triumph, also our defeat, because we have political impotence to fit into a new epoch that we have contributed to build, and we don't realize it. Why do I say this? Two data, nothing more. The truth is that the population quadrupled and GDP grew at least 20 times in the last century. Since 1990, approximately, every 6 years world trade doubles. We could continue noting data that clearly establish the march of globalization. What is happening to us? We enter another epoch acceleratedly, but with politicians, cultural attire, parties and young people all old, before the frightening accumulation of changes that we cannot even register. We cannot manage globalization because our thinking is not global. We don't know if it's due to a cultural limitation, or we are reaching biological limits. Our epoch is portentously revolutionary, as the history of humanity has never known, but it has no conscious conduct or less, simply instinctive conduct. Much less still, organized political conduct, because we haven't even had precursor philosophy before the speed of changes that accumulated. Greed, so negative and so much a motor of history, that which pushed toward material, technical and scientific progress, which has made what our epoch and our time is in a phenomenal advance on many fronts. Paradoxically, that same tool, greed that pushed us to domesticate science and transform it into technology, precipitates us into a misty abyss, into a history we don't know, into an epoch without history, and we are running out of eyes and collective intelligence to continue colonizing and perpetually transforming ourselves. Because if this little human bug has one characteristic, it is that it is an anthropological conqueror. It seems that things take autonomy and things subject men. On one side or another, there are plenty of glimpses to glimpse these things and in any case glimpse the course, but it is impossible for us to collectivize global decisions for that whole. More clearly, individual greed has triumphed largely over the superior greed of the species. Let us clarify. What is the whole, that word we use for us? It is the global life of the Earth system, including human life, with all the fragile balances that make it possible for us to perpetuate ourselves. On the other hand, simpler, less debatable and more evident. In our West particularly, because that's where we come from, although we come from the South. The republics that were born to affirm that men are equal, that nobody is more than anyone, that their governments should represent the common good, justice and equity. Many times the republics are deformed and fall into oblivion of ordinary people, those who walk the streets, the common people. The republics were not created to vegetate above the flock, but on the contrary are a cry in history to be functional to the life of the peoples themselves and therefore the majorities, and they owe themselves to fight for the promotion of the majorities. For whatever reason, due to feudal reminiscences that are there in our culture, due to dominating classism, perhaps due to the consumerist culture that surrounds us all, the republics frequently in their directions adopt a daily living that excludes, that puts distance from the man on the street. In fact, that man on the street should be the central cause of the political struggle of the life of the republics. Republican governments should increasingly resemble their respective peoples in the way of living, and in the way of committing to life. The fact is that we cultivate feudal archaisms, consented courtesianships. We make hierarchical differentiations that deep down undermine the best that republics have. that nobody is more than anyone. The play of these and other factors retain us in prehistory, and today it is impossible to renounce war when politics fails. Thus the economy is strangled, we waste resources. Listen well, dear friends, in every minute of the world, in every minute $2 million of military budgets are spent on this earth. $2 million per minute on military budgets. Medical research on all diseases that has advanced enormously, and is a blessing for the promise of living a few more years. That research barely covers a fifth of military research. This process from which we cannot escape is blind, ensures hatred and fanaticism, distrust, sources of new wars, and this too waste of fortunes. I know that it is very easy poetically to self-criticize nationally, and I think it would be an innocence in this world to propose that there exist resources to save and spend them on other useful things. That would be possible again if we were capable of exercising world agreements and world preventions of planetary policies that guarantee peace, and that give us the weakest guarantees we don't have. There would be enormous resources to cut, and attend to the greatest shames above the earth. But one question suffices. In this humanity today, where would it go without the existence of those planetary guarantees? Then each one makes sale of arms according to their magnitude. And there we are, because we cannot reason as a species, barely as individuals. World institutions, particularly today, vegetate in the consented shadow of the dissidences of the great nations. And obviously these want to retain their quotas of power. They block in fact this UN that was created with hope, and as a dream of peace for humanity. But worse still, they uproot it from democracy in the planetary sense, because we are not equal. We cannot be equal in this world where there are stronger and weaker. Therefore it is a wounded planetary democracy, and the history of a possible world agreement of peace, militant, combative, and that truly exists is cut off. Then we patch diseases there where it makes eclosion, and presents itself according to what seems to some of the great powers. The rest of us look from afar, we don't exist. The UN, our UN languishes, becomes bureaucratized due to lack of power and autonomy, recognition. Above all, democracy toward the weaker world that constitutes the overwhelming majority of the planet. I give a small example, tiny. Our small country has in absolute terms the largest number of soldiers in peace missions of the Latin American countries scattered around the world. And there we are where they ask us to be. But we are small, weak. Where resources are distributed and decisions are made, we don't even enter to serve coffee. In the deepest part of our heart there exists an enormous yearning to help man emerge from prehistory. I define that man while living with a climate of war is in prehistory, despite the many artifacts he can build. Until man does not emerge from that prehistory and archive war as a resource when politics fails. That is the long march and the challenge we have ahead. And we say it with knowledge of the cause. We know the solitudes of war. However, these dreams, these challenges that are on the horizon imply fighting for an agenda of world agreements that begin to govern our history and overcome step by step the threats to life. The species as such should have a government for humanity that overcomes individualism, and strives to recreate political heads that turn to the path of science, and not only to the immediate interests that are governing and drowning us. Parallel to this, we must understand that the indigent of the world are not from Africa or Latin America, they are from all humanity, and this must as such globalized tend to engage in their development, so they can live with decency by themselves. The necessary resources exist, they are in that predatory waste of our civilization. A few days ago they paid tribute there in California in a fire station to a light bulb that has been on for 100 years. 100 years it has been on, friends. How many millions of dollars they took from our pockets deliberately making junk so people buy and buy. But this globalization of looking after the entire planet and all life means a brutal cultural change. It is what history is requiring of us. The entire material base has changed and has faltered. Men with our culture remain as if nothing had happened. And instead of governing globalization, it governs us. For more than 20 years we have been discussing the humble Tobin tax, impossible to apply at the planet level. All the banks of financial power rise up wounded in their private property, and who knows how many other things. However, this is the paradoxical. However, with talent, with collective work, with science, man step by step is capable of transforming deserts into green. Man can take agriculture to the sea. Man can create vegetables that live with salt water. The force of humanity concentrated on the essential is immeasurable. There are the most portentous sources of energy. What do we know about photosynthesis? Almost nothing. Energy in the world is abundant if we work to use it. It is possible to uproot all indigence from the planet completely. It is possible to create stability, and it will be possible for coming generations if they manage to start reasoning as a species, not only as individuals, to take life to the galaxy and continue with that conquering dream that we human beings carry in our genetics. But for all those dreams to be possible, we need to govern ourselves, or we will succumb, because we are not capable of being up to the civilization that we have in fact been developing. This is our dilemma. Let us not entertain ourselves only patching consequences. Let us think about the deep causes, about the civilization of waste, about the civilization of use and throw away, which what it is throwing away is wasted human lifetime, squandering useless things. Think that human life is a miracle, that we are alive by miracle and nothing is worth more than life, and that our biological duty is above all things to respect life and promote it, create it, procreate it, and understand that the species is our we. Thank you.